So, Vincent, the current state of the job market, according to the candidates, their point of view, what are they experiencing, and how are they having success or failure in the current job market?
Well, it kind of depends on the level, but if you're looking, more of a senior level, lieutenant colonel type above coming out of the military, the job market's pretty good. It's still, have to figure it's going to take, 4 to 6 months of prior preparation. And that's why we usually tell people, you can't start too early. At least a year out, you should really start looking at trying to narrow down what the career is that you want to look at doing after your time in the military.
So, what basically something we all get told, start a year out, always, go out, but most people don't.
Yeah.
Rarely. So when they don't plan for exiting or transitioning out of service, what's usually the frustrations that they feel?
Yeah. So speaking from experience, because we're our own worst enemy, right? Being in the military, we tend to plan great in the military, military decision making. But when it comes to our private side, we do terrible. And I didn't even know, 12, 14 years ago, when I got out in 2010, I didn't even know career coaching existed. So I did what a lot of people do. I waited to the last minute. I went to several seminars or career fairs and took the first job that was offered to me because it seemed like a good job and a good location. So when you don't prepare ahead, you're kind of forced into whatever's available, or, otherwise you end up not working for 6, could be 8 months, could be a year while you do that transition and really start figuring out what you want to do. So, like I said, again, I hate to reiterate it, but a year to year and a half is not too early to really start looking at what you want to do next. Because a lot of people look at, well, is it the government? It's easy. It's not easy, but they think it's easy that I just want to go into government contracting, right? Whether it's a GS or the contracting world. But that takes a lot of preparation as well, especially since they changed the rules again, where it used to be you could go right in from your service time into a GS position. And I think 2 or 3 years ago, they stopped that again. So now you have to wait 6 months. So If you're coming out and you want if you're 06 and you're looking for a GS 15 job, you can't do that for 6 months. So either you're prepared to wait 6 months or you find something in the interim that you want to do.
And would it be safe to say that they should even plan maybe even longer? They're like their last duty station, that last 3 years that they're looking to exit the service, that they should really start to think, okay, where do I want to be? Where do I want to be? Maybe get stationed close to that location, or if they're not stationed at that location, start planning trips down there, networking and other things.
Absolutely. So I'm working with a couple of clients right now. One is 4 years out and one is 2.5 years out. And, depending how far they are, depends on how you work with them, how often we meet. But again, I said it's never too early. So the one that's 4 years out has some very specifics, like you just mentioned. He wants to end up in a very specific area of the country or region. So that's his most important factor. So now we're going through a really detailed analysis. Okay, what does that look like? And what do you really want to do next? So we have time to start narrowing that pipeline down.
And actually, you mentioned what do you want to do next, which kind of speaks to what we talked about before, is those career categories and how you kind of organize somebody as you're preparing to transition. So if you don't mind sharing, what are the career categories and how do they relate to a career transition?
Yeah. So what I've done is I kind of broke it down into 3 major areas that we all look for. What is the ideal job? What's the ideal compensation? And what's the ideal quality of life? So ideal job, great compensation, great quality of life. Now, every one of those 3 are based on your individual needs. I always say, depending on where you are and what you want to do. The ideal job for you today may not be the ideal job you're looking for 6 months down the road. Compensation, great quality of life. That may have to do with the area you want to live in. And as you go through and start looking at these three different areas, they all kind of nest together, are interrelated. So what I always coach my clients on, by all means, you want to stay away from this one area that is totally red. If you look at the stoplight chart that we used to use a long time ago, if you don't have the ideal job, you don't have great compensation, and your quality of life is bad, well, you're in for some big trouble, right? So we want to tend to keep guys out of that area. Everything else can be a stepping stone. We want to get you into the area where the job that you're looking for is going to be the right job for you. The compensation is going to be the right for you, and the quality of life is going to be right for you where you are. So again, those are all independent. And that's really when I coach people, is to figure out which one of those seems to be the most important and how do we get you where you want to be.
So what are some examples of the career categories that we talk about? Like you mentioned, best job, location, salary, those three things. If somebody were to think about location, what would drive their location thoughts?
Well, again, if say somebody wants to retire in the Washington, D.C. area, right? So that's going to drive probably a lot more towards the government contracting. They probably have, guys that are senior getting out, have a lot of networks built, and it may be easier to find a job in that area. Then they have to start looking at, okay, I want to live there, but do I want to live in DC? I want to live out maybe, towards Alexandria. Well, the cost of living is going to be a lot higher. So you really now need to start looking at, okay, maybe a different level job. So, coming out as a colonel, you may start looking at SES position, which you'd be qualified to go ahead and try for. So, depending on which one of those areas that you really hone in on, then we can really start focusing everything else. And again, that all depends on how you coach a client as well. So, if a client really wants to hit on all three, the ideal job, that great compensation, that great quality of life, well, then we really start on, okay, let's start setting goals. And then how do we develop those skill sets if you don't have them to get you into that, that trifecta area, if you will.
And with regards to planning, this sounds like a lot of time is required. And one of the things I've learned early in my career, you need to plan out 5, 10, 20 years. And in the service, we tend to take for granted that we have a job for life. Yeah. And we speak to, we think that we're going to continue to get promoted up the chain and that we're never not going to get promoted. And so thinking about that career transition and getting out, is what I feel is, even my own experience is like, okay, I'm ready to get out. I was like 2 years out and I decided location was my priority. So I went to the location, but then the jobs weren't there. It's like, oh, now what am I going to do? So I ended up starting my own business as an example. Part of what you and I both experienced, because you came out in 2010, I came out in 2010. The economy was down, and It was something different. And it's kind of almost the economy that we're in now that people are going to experience. So planning is definitely part of it. But in regards to expectations, what should people expect in regards to transitioning out? You mentioned time. Now this market compared to just last year, what's the difference in expectations a person should set in their own mind so they're prepared for the transition?
Yeah, well, actually, it's been every year since COVID, right? Because we had that big slowdown in the job markets. A lot of remote work happened. So it's starting to pick up as far as movement within the job sector to different levels of jobs. So I'm seeing people are transitioning faster, but it still is based on your planning and your time. And in the military coming out, what I always tell guys is, we're lucky than most, because if you spent 20 plus years, you at least have something to fall back on. Most of us at that point have a retirement. We probably have some disability. So we can really afford to plan forward and look at getting exactly what job, what compensation. And I always tell people, don't sell yourself short. A lot of people say, well, I'm coming out of the military. What can I do? Well, I tell people you can do whatever you want to do, and the availability of the jobs are out there, and it's how you go about getting them. And that's the thing that we really need to help our clients understand is, for instance, last week I had a potential client who said, hey, I want a resume. And my first question is, when anybody tells me they want a resume, is, okay, what are you going to do with that resume? And he said, well, I'm posting on job boards right now, and I need it to post. I said, okay, so if I give you this new resume, first of all, we need to target it towards something. You can't just have a generic resume. So we need to find out what kind of career area you want to target. Then once we get a resume, then I need to show you what are the different ways you can get that resume into the hands of our hiring manager and not just post it on the board. So what came back was the gentleman said, hey, yeah, your services, I can't afford you basically. And I'm just going to update my resume and continue to post it. So basically I say happy fishing, because you and 10 million other people are doing the exact same thing.
That makes a lot of sense. I'm just going to post on job boards and hope that I get a job. And they really don't understand how this job process works. We are those that are job searching. The other half is the employers looking for people. That there's a, like you said, I'm glad you used the word fishing. There's a big ocean between the two, right?
Yeah.
And the employers are fishing for fish and the employees are fishing for jobs. That's a great analogy.
The employees want the right candidates. I mean, they're looking for the right people. So if you don't present yourself in that light, and I don't like to tell people you got to sell yourself, but you have to present yourself in the right way. So if you're a senior leader and you want to get into marketing, well, even in the military, we've done a lot of marketing, right? We market ourselves our whole career. So we just need to capture that on your resume and look at some specific jobs, and then everything gets nested from there. And as long as we do that, then when you meet with either it's a recruiter or you get right to the hiring manager, they're going to see, hey, this guy knows what he's doing. I call it, hey, we want you to eliminate the competition. Bottom line is, so many people are going out there, and like we said before, we don't want you fishing on job boards. Yeah, you may use job boards to find some different areas and things that are out there, but then there are venues to go and actually find specific jobs in specific areas and things that you want to do.
Let me ask you a question about the job boards themselves. What are job boards really used for? Everybody's posting on job boards. They're on LinkedIn. They're on SCM.Jobs, Indeed, all these different job boards. Is that really for an employee, or is it more for a recruiter to find candidates? I mean, yeah, they're out there. How are these things used?
Yeah, it's more for the recruiters. I mean, the employers use them, and that's where you get into this whole the ATS system tracking and keywords, and people just get all caught up in that. And I always tell people, if you get your resume to the right person, you don't need to worry about that, So job boards are there, and I tell my clients to use them to find types of jobs that you want. Because if and it's usually, if it's a senior level job, they're not going to post it on a job board. Right. 80% of the jobs that people get, they're not on job boards. Companies post, and then, I hate using percentages, but maybe 80% of the time, those jobs aren't even available anymore because they filled them. So I tell my clients, hey, if you want to post on a job board, you're wasting your time, but if you feel you have to do it, look for something very specific and then find out who that hiring manager is. Go to LinkedIn, go to the company website, pick up the phone, call a company and say, hey, I saw your job on Indeed. I'd like to find out who the hiring. People forget that we can still call, people on the phone. It still works today.
Absolutely. We have this communication thing called people.
Yeah, right.
We can talk to each other. Yeah. And with the job board, so it sounds like, that job boards are there for employers to put out descriptions of people they're looking for.
pretty much.
And
Yes.
the candidates need to go to those job boards to find out the skills they need to highlight on their resume or translate their experience into the skills that they're looking for. So these folks can match up and I think then take this step you're talking about, reach out, call, and make a personal connection to skip the job board.
Yeah, exactly. And LinkedIn is great for that, for making, connections, using your network, using your alumni network, whatever college you went to. There are many different ways to be able to do that, to make those connections. What I tell people is just exactly like you said, use those job boards to find areas that you're interested in. What I tell them, what do you want to do next? The world is open. Don't confine yourself to what you think you're qualified for. Let us sort through it. Find something out there. Use Indeed, use LinkedIn, use Monster, and find 10 jobs that really interest you. Or I tell them, vice president of strategy, come up with anything on the outside that you think interests you. You can Google vice president of strategy and it'll come up. It'll tell you exactly what the qualifications of someone in that area is, what they're looking for. So then it's not the specific company that has that job. It's you then marketing yourself to be a vice president of strategy. Then we can start looking at, okay, does Google have that? Does Cisco have that? Does IBM, then we find the companies that have the vice president of strategy, because you now have branded yourself and marketed yourself as a vice president of strategy.
Right. It sounds like I've mentioned this several times with several people. You have to be the CEO of your own career. You have to market yourself. You have to, just like a company, you have to find your ideal customer, your ideal position, and then put that position in front of the right customer, the employer that's going to buy you as an employee, so that you can work for them. And I know it sounds kind of commoditized, and we're kind of taken away, but people really have to manage their career like a CEO, have that vision, 5, 10, 20 years. Where do I want to take the company? Where do I want to take my career? And build out that career plan. And something that just popped in my head, what are you seeing is an easy transition from somebody in the military into the civilian world? Because translating our military experience into civilian value seems to be a challenge, something we see a lot. Then we end up, having to start over, or we feel we have to start over. Is there an easy way to transition from, let's say, the infantry to a civilian world that may not be police officer or security, which would be that's where most of them fall, but they want to go into marketing, or supply chain is obviously a good logistics to supply chain. How is it easy for a transitioning individual to find a new career that mirrors their military career?
Okay. So
it's a lot.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So really what you're saying was it really didn't mirror their career. So if you have a guy coming out of the infantry, wants to get into marketing, right?
Right.
So then what we need to do is, again, needs to find several marketing jobs that he's interested in. Some of them may be, here's a bottom line qualification. You have to have a bachelor's degree in business, or you have to have a master's. Those are things that you either have or you don't. And the company's not going to look at you if you don't. So if you have them, okay, then everything else is on the table, because if you're an infantry soldier, you've led men, you've dealt with logistics problems, you've dealt with HR problems, you have done all these things that you don't think about. So then we just need to pull them out and get them down on paper in the right way. And you'd be surprised how a regular infantry E7 coming out, program management, anything like that, even without a PMP certificate. A lot of guys come out and say, hey, do I need to get a PMP? I'm like, no, not unless the job actually says you need it. You've done project management your whole career. It's all about planning and laying things out. So if you want to get into, and you really like that, then I would say, yes, get a PMP certificate. But otherwise, hey, that's just one area. We got to take all your leadership capabilities. Like I said, human resources. How many times that, an E7, E8 type leader, or an 04, 05, 06 commander, right? That's what we do. I mean, we get guys promoted. We move guys to different jobs. I mean, we are doing what they do in the civilian world. You just have to know how to couch that correctly.
Right. Absolutely. I think it's where, when I was hearing that, it's like the really value of using a career coach, is able to make that translation of your
Yes.
military career into a civilian career. And why, when you mentioned, well, I'm just going to post the guy that you mentioned before, the example, the guy that says, I'm going to just post the resume on the job boards and we'll see what happens. You're like, yeah, good luck. Because we don't have that skill to translate my skills in the military to what the civilian value is. And the way to look at it, you're just too close to it. You
Yes.
don't know what you don't know. You don't realize, like you just described, human HR responsibility, the ability to manage people. It's intangible. People will talk about the intangibles of the military all the time, but they don't know how to articulate that into civilian value. And I think that's probably a point people need to understand. Your experience and intangibles in the military need to be translated into civilian value, because when a company's hiring you, they're hiring you at $1 for an ROI, right? So I'm going to spend, $75,000, $100,000 a year on you, and I expect to generate at least 200,000, if not 2 million, because you work for my company.
Yeah, I always tell people exactly that the company, they're going to hire you. They're going to make more money than it takes to hire you. That's the way you need to think of it. Like you said, ROI. So what do I have to offer that company that is going to make them a lot of money? Well, it's my leadership skills. It's my ability to plan. It's my ability to manage. It's my ability to solve problems. There's all these things that they're looking for, and we call them transferable skills. But you just have to be able to get them down on paper. And I was in the same boat. I mean, I look at my resume that I put together when I got out in 2010, and then resumes I write for my clients now. And, I laugh at my original resume, and I'm like, no wonder why it got thrown in the water. Or my original LinkedIn profile, so when I read somebody's LinkedIn profile, not just in the military, but even on, senior executive, demonstrated history of doing blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, well, of course you have a demonstrated history of excellence. And that's not what somebody wants to see. They want to see how you got there. So with LinkedIn, for instance, it needs to tell the story of how you got to where you are and what you're going to do for that company later.
And I think the story is what they learn the value from. You tell the story by showing your experience, and it demonstrates your thought process, your ability to analyze and move and accomplish goals.
Exactly.
And so the story is very important, not so much the quantitative things, which are important, the results you've achieved, but then it's the story of how you got there that allows a person, an employer, to translate, okay, my experience was the job market or the business industry that I've been in, and that's been my war, my battle for my entire career. Now I see how you did that in the military, so I see an ability to connect the dots on how we work together.
Yeah, and it's a process, and I tell people that it. Just like in the military, you got to think of it. It is a process on how you get from transitioning to the day you sign the compensation paper to get that job, and it all has to start with, what do you want to do? What are your goals? What are your values? That's what I do with the clients. It's kind of a lot of maybe soul searching at first. Don't limit yourself. What do you want to do? You can do anything. So just let's find what you want to do, and then we'll see if you can do it. And 9 times out of 10, you can. We just need to then find those jobs. Then we pull out those key qualifications. From there, then we can write your achievements that you've done, because everybody's done some great things. We just have to write them the right way. And then once that, then from there, we come out with the stories, like you said. Okay, so when you're in an interview and they say, well, tell me about a time that you solved a complex problem that was able to bring 2 different organizations together. You go, man, right. Boom, I did that, So yeah. And that's what career coaches do. They help you define all these things that you don't know and put them down in a formatted manner to get you from A to B. It's you don't know what you don't know, right? And that's what we always say. And I always say, people, let me help you learn from my experience, because I did it the wrong way. And my first job out of the military lasted 2 years.
That's it. Yeah, that we all. You mentioned something. Let's use that example of how you just brought up an example of how to translate the skills. How do we bring two organizations together, which can translate to civilian values a couple different ways? One, how do you make a sale to an organization that's outside your company? How do you bring in two business units together to make them work better together? So how is that in the military? Let's kind of tell that story for two reasons. One, the civilians who are watching this can say, this is how military do things. And then the military who are watching this can start to see the value of working with a career coach and how they can pull out this story for them. And go ahead. What are your thoughts on that? I think if we can give people something they can actually see or hear in regards to the story, this will make a lot more sense to them.
Yeah. So I'll tell you about a time when I was a group camp commander out at the 1st Air Support Operations Group in Fort Lewis, Washington. We were tasked with building the organization from 2 squadrons out there right at Fort Lewis to adding 7 other squadrons and moving from 12th Air Force to 13th Air Force. So how are you going to do that? So, the first thing I did was I brought all my senior leadership in together. I said, we have a problem set and it's called change management. How are we going to manage this change and build an organization from 500 people today that tomorrow is going to look like 2,000 plus? And oh, by the way, spread out at 7 different geographic locations. Well, the way I did it was I brought in all my senior leaders, the ones that were coming in that were going to be working for us. We all got together. We war gamed it. Here's all the what ifs. Here's what we need to do. We came up with a timeline. We backwards planned. I assigned priorities. The first thing we need to do is we need to make sure that we get the venue and everything else. And then we have 2 4-star generals coming in. We need to make sure that they have billeting. And then we just assigned, everybody became a POC for the different actions. Then once I did that, I was able to write the plan, put it together, brief both my bosses. And, from there, we got buy-in from both sides. Once we had the buy-in from 13th Air Force and 12th Air Force about the ceremony and how it was going to look, then I assigned somebody to put together that ceremony and move it forward. And by the end of the day, what resulted was just a seamless transition where we went from 500 people to 2,000 plus, from 2 squadrons to 7 plus squadrons. And the 13th Air Force commander said, this was just like I just lost the word for it. The air campaign plan. It was run so smoothly. So at the end of the day, based on everything that we're able to put together, we went from 500 people to 2,500 people moving forward and not missing a beat and meeting the PACOM commander's intent.
And that's a great story and how we brought organizations, and we want to translate that into a civilian experience. And I'll give it a shot, and then you can let me know. So I'm a CEO of a medium-sized company, and I've decided to expand my market share because of the economic downturn. So CEO talks to military person, say, I need to expand my market share in this industry. Mm-hmm. And I want to, get more clients, more customers. The military mind is going to say, okay, who's your client? Who's your customer? Once they understand that, they're going to go out and meet those clients or customers, that profile, just like you did. You brought in the key players. You found out who they were. You start to have the meetings, start to understand their needs and translate those needs into what your company can do for them. And you start putting together meetings to demonstrate the value, and ultimately results in a sale, or in your case, results in a command coming together to grow from 500 or 1,500 people to over 2,000 people in a matter of months. Did I kind of nail it right there? What do you think?
Yeah, definitely. So, the key pieces are, what are your planning skills? What's your ability to cross collaborate? Your leadership abilities. And I always tell people say, well, one of my key qualifications are leadership. Well, there are many different kinds of leadership, right? There's leading people, there's leading organizations. So one of the ones I really like, and right there would be what we call transformational leadership. Mm-hmm. So what you just did was, Okay, I'm bringing in two companies, bringing them together. I need to transform that company into something it wasn't today. The way I'm going to do that is by bringing in the CEO of this company, the CEO of this company. We're going to sit down. We're going to talk through what are your needs? What are your needs? Okay, and once we get that, here's what the company is going to need to look like 3 years down the road, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road. How are we going to get there? Okay, now we start brainstorming from there.
And I think a key part of this that civilians need to understand, as a CEO, as a president, as an owner of a company, your job is to provide clear mission and clear vision for what you want that company to look like. And then a military person can grab those two elements and achieve success. And they will drive through whatever obstacles are in their way to achieve the result you want. So, and I've experienced this where I was hired and worked for a company. They're like, yeah, you're going to do great. You're military. You're exactly what we need. Well, what do you want? Well, we're kind of thinking this, we're kind of thinking that. And I was left to guess what they wanted. So when I took action, it was not what they wanted. Ultimately, it was like, I missed it by, 2 or 3 degrees to the left, which can be, a big miss in some time.
Right. Yeah. We call that commander's intent, right?
Right.
So
exactly.
without the CEO's intent, and that's, another great thing is instead of labeling it, one of our things we do is, we're able to take commander's intent and run with it. Well, when you express these ideas is, one of the things that I'm really good at is I'm good at going to my boss and, hey, boss, exactly what do you want us to do? Break it down for me. Give me, don't leave me out here like you said, because if I go 3 degrees off base here, by the time I'm done with the project, we're 55 degrees off center. So I need your intent. I need what you want to do. And then I need you to let me run with it, right? You give me the plan and factors, and I will bring these two organizations for you in 3 months. And here's how I'm going to do it.
And again, that's where the CEOs of the civilian world need to understand their part in this process, the ability to take and leverage the value a military person can bring to the table. So let's dial it back. We talked a little bit about the categories, the career categories, which was the right job, the right location, and the right compensation. Mm-hmm. So with that, how do actions differ based on where they fall in that category spectrum? How do their actions differ?
Yeah, so let me just kind of got some notes here just so, so if you, like we talked about, if you don't have the right job, you don't have the right compensation, and you don't love what you do, you're really going to, lack in sense of purpose, lack in motivation. You're really going to require, the coach is going to really kind of be your cheerleader, right? Motivate you to get through the day. And what I tell people is you can't just sit there applying on job boards. Let's look at some other ways to do it. Go build a shed in the meantime, those kind of things. Now, if you have the ideal job and maybe your compensation isn't great, but you love what you do and you're moving on despite that low compensation, well, okay, you need to understand that down the road, you're probably going to start getting discouraged. You're going to be frustrated because your compensation is not increasing. So now we know what you love to do. We know what makes you happy. And now we just need to get a job that's going to pay you what you're worth. So now that, I don't want to say that's easy, but we've already knocked 2 of those out. Now all we have to do is need to seek some sort of employment that has the adequate compensation. I use the word compensation instead of salary because a lot of guys get fixated on salary. Well, I need to make $135,000 when I get out. Okay, maybe you do, maybe you don't. Let's take a look at what does that look like. Right. Yeah, we all have TRICARE, but medical's big, 401ks are big. There's a lot of different things that go into a good compensation package. It could be stock options, could be a lot of different things. So that's going to give me as a coach a little different strategy than, like I said, that person that we just talked about a minute ago who was in that bright red. So now we need to really think about what are those interview strategies? How do I get you to interview, like we just talked about, correctly to translate that military speak on bringing 2 large organizations together. And then you have to have that salary and benefit in mind and what it is, and the confidence to go out there and make it happen. And then now we're looking for the right job, which is a lot easier than looking for the right job and the right compensation and the right quality of life. We already know based on this type job, it's right for me. The quality of life gives me what I need. Now I just need to find the company that's going to pay me what I need.
And from that, I get the point I want people to grasp from what the way you just shared everything. A career coach is exactly that, a career coach, not a job finding coach. Once you get the job, you're done with that coach. And we'll talk about this at the end. How do you work with a career coach? But this is a good point to kind of highlight that need to have a good relationship with a career coach. They understand your long-term career value, because that first job out of the military most likely is not going to be one of the three, right? It's going to not be the right location, it's not going to be the right job, or it's not going to be the right salary. And the coach needs to keep you in check, to keep you focused on the career path. And I can speak from my own experience where I had a job, it was good location, good pay, but the job was just not there. And I had nobody to capture me and say, wait, gut check, sir, don't quit.
Yeah.
Don't quit. And, but don't quit. It's like, let's take where you are and see where you want to go. And let's build a plan to where you want to go without throwing this opportunity out the window just because you're frustrated with the job itself. And it was more of a culture thing with me than it had anything else to do with anything. And so I think that's important.
Yeah, as I coach people, I tell them, this can be a stair-step approach as long as you know where you are, that, okay, this job is going to give me great compensation. It's going to be a job I love, but my quality of life probably is not going to be as good as I want it to be right. As long as you understand that going in, okay, now we start looking at, okay, we'll do that for a few years. But in the meantime, we need to get you to where because again, if your values may change, so to get you into that green 5 years from now may be different than how we do it today.
Hey, green 5 years from now. And I think that's an important thing. Time. It takes time. You've been in the service for 20 years, 25, 30 years, 4, 5, 10, whatever it is, however long you've been in the service, that was a commitment, a lifestyle. And now you're transitioning out. You've got to build a plan to make that happen. When we look at the right job, what are the most important factors a client should consider for the right job? How do they translate that? It's more of an internal conversation, like what's the right job for me?
Right. And what a coach does, so a coach is a difference between coaching and mentoring. We do a lot of mentoring in the military. We don't do a lot of coaching, because coaching is sitting back, asking a lot of questions, and so it's your life, it's your compensation, your quality of life. So what does that look like to you? Explain it to me as your coach, what quality of life you're looking for. What's your compensation package? What, why do you need to make that much money? Or why do you think you can only make this much money? Right. So it's a lot of questions that I try and drag out of my clients. And, once they start seeing the process and what it entails, like, okay, now, it's a lot of work. I don't do the work for my clients. I'm like, this is going to be work. You're going to have assignments. You're going to have to do things. And the more you put into it, the more you get out of it. And, and I tell people, I'm your confidant. Just, you have to feel 100% comfortable with me. You tell me anything, it stays here, but I'm going to ask you some really tough questions. And you really have to sit back and think about it. In fact, one of my clients last week, I gave her a lot of the initial things, and she was going over it over the weekend, and her husband asked her, he said, aren't you done with those worksheets yet? And she's like, this is a lot of work. I didn't think about how much soul searching I was going to have to do to really, because we want to get inside your head. What are those goals? Where do you want to be 10 years from now? What values do you have today? And I don't mean your moral values. That's not what I'm talking about. So for instance, when I got out, we, in the military, you always value, hey, I'm going to get out. I'm going to have that big house. I'm going to live where I want to live. And, it was always General, I just lost his name, from Desert Storm.
Schwarzkopf or Powell?
General Powell. If you read his book, it was always about, my wife and getting a big house when we retire someday and everything else. And we kind of just have that because we move so much, right? Well, then we realize once we do that, is that really what I valued? Have, or is it the friends that surround me with it and everything? So, we really need to get to that to understand ourselves. And like I keep saying, we don't do a good job about that in the military. We help a lot of other people, but we put ourselves on the back seat a lot of time. We really don't spend a lot of time worrying about our career. We think, okay, if I do a good job, my boss is going to take care of me, right? And I'm going to end up, I don't think anybody comes into the military, as a second lieutenant and says, I'm going to retire as a 4-star general someday. I don't think so. However, you may have goals like I did when I came in. It was like, I want to be a squadron commander because I think being a squadron commander, I'm going to be able to really take care of people. Anything above that is gravy. So it's kind of the same thing as you come out into civilian life is, all right, 5 years from now, I want to be able to really step back comfortably and maybe open my own business. Okay, that's great. If we know that, now we know we may sacrifice a little bit on where you want to live today to be able to get that compensation up here so you can open that business 5 years from now in Seattle or Texas or wherever it is, right? So, but without knowing that, if you don't tell me that, if I can't pull that out of you as a coach, we're going to be going down the wrong path.
And then it's 5 years later and you want to open a business and you don't have the means, the funds, the time, or any number of things. Exactly. That doesn't put you in that position. And one thing you brought up several times was money, compensation. How do we determine what the right compensation is for them? I think this is a reason I bring this up. You mentioned the big house, the money, the time, all these different things, is that you're going to invest time to get this result. We think it's a money-driven result, but what I tell my kids, for example, it's like, what lifestyle do you want? One said, I want to live in a van and surf. I said, okay, how do you pay for that?
Yeah.
You need to wash dishes. Okay, well, you now have your compensation to wash dishes so you can go in the van and surf wherever you want. You made a decision. The result was washing dishes, and now you have the freedom you want, but you don't have the money you need for a big house. So when you talk to someone about compensation, how do you really dig into that? How do you pull that stuff out for them?
Yeah. So again, it goes back to, first of all, what does that look like for you? And you got to realize that, with more compensation comes a lot more responsibility. Not that you're going to work a lot harder, because we all work hard, but that responsibility is going to take its toll in other areas. So, if you want to be the CEO of such and such a company or a nonprofit, think about the hours, think about the travel, think about all these things. Now, if that's something you're comfortable with, okay, same thing. I tell my son, my 27-year-old, who was like, well, I just want to travel the world. I'm like, huh, that's great. How are you going to do that? Well, I'm going to get a job. Well, okay, what kind of job are you going to get? What's going to give you the money to do it? And, so if, again, going back to, let's say you're an 06 coming out and, you, like I said, you've got your retirement, you probably have some disability, and then you're looking at, 10 years from now, I just want to retire completely. Okay, let's take a look. Let's now take a look at it. I'm not going to get into all your finances, but what kind of money do you have put away? So now we'll look at a compensation package that probably offers a company with some stock options, really good 401k matching, all those things that go into the compensation that we don't know about or we don't think about in the military. Our paycheck, like you said, comes in every 2 weeks. And, we put a certain amount aside for savings or investing, whatever it is. But now I tell my client, everything is negotiable at that level. If you want 40 days off instead of 30, it's negotiable. Maybe when you go and negotiate, you give up some salary for days off, or, okay, I 2 weeks off is fine with me. I'm happy as long as I take 2 weeks together, and I like, a larger signing bonus or something like that. But everything is negotiable. You'll have, by doing your research again, you're going to have kind of ballpark figures based on geographic locations of what the compensation is for that type job.
And knowing what you want and understanding there are trade-offs, and it kind of speaks to the quality of life when we talk about quality of life? What should we consider when we talk about quality of life? For example, when, I got out of service, the main reason I got out of service was to spend time with family. That was my main thing. And it was like, that's my mission. I will spend time with my kids and grow up with them, because I didn't when I was in the military. So that was something I wanted. So in return was I didn't have the ideal job that made a lot of money, because those jobs took me away from the family I wanted to have. If you spent 20, 30 years in the service, you most likely did sacrifice family. So if you're going to go be a CEO of a nonprofit or something, you're going to continue to sacrifice family, right? So when you think about quality of life, when you're talking to clients about quality of life, what are the things they should consider?
Yeah. So the first is they need to understand and look at what is that quality of life for them that they're looking for, right? Because, after, like you said, 20 or 30 years in the military, your kids may be all gone. So maybe they're spread out at 3 different locations in the US. So now that quality of life you want is to be able to travel. You want the flexibility with a job to travel. Okay, so now we're going to start looking at some remote possibilities, or maybe into marketing or sales where you get to travel as part of your job that can get you to different parts of the country. Or, like I said, remote work has become really big. So there are a lot of different remote areas where you can work from anywhere. Like I said, my career coaching business is totally remote. I live here in Southern Italy, and, I make myself available during certain times for clients on the West Coast, the East Coast, Central Time. I have some clients over in the Middle East. So it depends, but that quality of life, you have to figure out what it is. Like you said, if it's, I still have kids and they're going to be a senior in high school next year, I need to have a job that's going to allow me to get time off to go to all my son's football games. Okay, well, you're probably not looking for a CEO job then right now.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you're looking for a government type contract job that's local and it's 8 to 5 or somewhere around there. But if we don't know that, we can't market you into the right area. But that's where, again, you need to look, what's that long range plan with it? I know after 2 years, my son's going to graduate and he's going to go off to college. After that, I don't know. So, okay, let's take a short-term look to get you something that's ideal for you, gives you the quality of life. And then during that next 2-year transition period where you're doing what you want to do, yeah, your compensation may not be exactly what you wanted, but you're getting that ideal quality of life. Then once that happens, okay, what's that next step? What's that transition look like, that stair-step approach?
It just sounds like, just knowing what you want, having that deep conversation about quality of life and really defining what that is, and not listening to the media or even the transition folks coming out of service and that are on the base saying you need to get a good job. It's like, well, let's really dig into what do you really, really want? What's valuable, as you mentioned, value several times.
Yeah.
What does it mean? And
what is a good job, right? Yeah. I mean, right. Like I said, what's good to you may not be good to me. What was good for me 4 years ago was working in Abu Dhabi as a senior military advisor, making a lot of money. That was good for me because it got me to what I wanted to do, was become a career coach on my own schedule, my own time, living here in Southern Italy and getting to spend time with my 7 grandkids. That's, so I did do a little bit of good planning after I made several mistakes. But again, what was good for me 6 years ago isn't what's good for me today. So again, we keep going back to it's a two-way street between that coach. And I always tell people, you're interviewing that coach when you meet with them first time, just like there are clients that have come to me and then I don't take them. I say, thanks, but I just don't think we're the right fit because whatever the reason is. Same thing with a coach. You're interviewing a coach just like you interview a company when you sit down to join a company. And you may not like my style, and that's okay. You may like somebody else's style. It just depends. But you have to deal with somebody who you feel very comfortable with, who can translate those skills for you and is able to pull exactly out of you what you want to do and be able to help you narrow that down.
And I would offer for somebody who made the comment someone made earlier to you, well, you cost too much. I'm going to just post my job on job where it's like, well, how much is too much? How much time are you willing to waste not getting the results you want to, by not using a career coach. And I bring that up, and you just mentioned, you may not be the good fit for anyone who's watching this. So you need to have the interview both ways, looking for that good relationship at the value you're trying to achieve. If you want to get a $125,000 job after the service, for example, how much are you willing to invest? Well, let's just step back. How much are you willing to invest? If I have $100, if I invest $100 and I make 1,000, that's 10 times my return. Is it worth $100? Vice versa. If I'm looking for 125,000, am I willing to invest 10,000 to make 125,000? Not knowing the rates of all the different career coaches who may be out there. It's just an example of an investment with your ROI. And the most expensive part of your ROI is time. How much time are you willing to waste not getting the results you want by not working with a career coach?
Yeah.
And
with guys coming out that really don't know how the transition works in the civilian job market, or the people that I deal with that have been civilians and are switching jobs, and and I ask them, what are you doing? Well, I'm doing, is that working? No. Well, stop doing it. Why do you continue to spend 5 hours a day posting your resume if you haven't got one call, right? So, yeah.
Well, we got a few more minutes. I want to wrap up with a couple of action items. What actions should someone take right now, if they're transitioning out? What should they take? And I would say that's a two-part question. At what point in their career, and we talked about this earlier, how far out should they start planning? And then what actions should they take right now to start having a positive transition out of the service?
Yeah. So, if at least I say 18 months, start 18 months out, start thinking about where are the areas I want to be? What are my goals? What are my values? What do I want to do next? And, just start kind of finding out what's out there. Start building your network. Do what we call informational interviews. Find some people in your network on LinkedIn and just reach out to them and say, hey, I know you're in the marketing area. It seems like from your, it looks like you're kind of specialty niche. And I've been thinking about getting into marketing. Do you mind if we set up a 15-minute call? I can just pick your brain a little bit. I always tell people, make it about the person that you want to talk to, because people like talking about themselves. They do. So, if I'd say, hey, you're an expert in this career field, right away, you're like, yes, I am an expert. So let me tell you, right? But as opposed to, hey, I'm looking for a job, and I think that marketing may be a job that's going to pay me a lot of money. So are you willing to spend 15 minutes talking to me? I'm probably going to go, yeah, not so much, right? So it goes back to that value. You always want to present value to somebody, whether it's just an informational interview or reaching out on LinkedIn. Like I said, if I get a generic request on LinkedIn, the thing that just says, I want to connect with you on LinkedIn, unless it's a veteran or somebody I know, I disregard it. And if it's a veteran, then I write them and say, hey, always include a personal note that shows some value. Why do you want to connect with me? What value is it to me, right? So, hey, I want to connect with you because in the next year, I'm going to be transitioning, and I noticed you're in the logistics field. I've done a lot of work in the logistics field in the military, and I really want to find more out about it. And I really like what you're doing with your company. Boom. That's it. Now you make that connection and you just set up a time to chat. Now you start finding, oh, he works for Amazon Logistics. I used to do, okay, now you start building that network. Then they say, hey, I know so-and-so, right? So that's how you do it. So, the more you can build that network around what you're looking at doing next, the better off you'll be.
Yeah, I think you did. I've talked about the informational interview with other career coaches and asked well, what is that? How do you do it? And you describe perfectly how to do it. Reach out to somebody on LinkedIn, explain you're getting ready to transition. You're interested in a career in X industry. Do you have 15 minutes to help me transition out of service? The value is that person gets to feel like they contribute to the service, people transitioning out, and they get to talk about themselves. Like you said, who doesn't love to talk about themselves?
Yeah, right. Yep.
And the other thing I would mention is that beware of the media during this volatile economic time where they're going to start talking about unemployment and there are no jobs. What they're really talking about is unemployment is that people don't want to work.
Yeah.
Not that there are no jobs, because there's all kinds of jobs. You can just go on LinkedIn, ZipRecruiter, SCM.Jobs, all these different ones. You can see lists of thousands of jobs that are available for the right people that want those jobs, meaning there's opportunities. but knowing you want to land where you want to land, it's important to have that plan, which is why you want to work with a career coach. So that leads me to my last question is, how does a career coach help a person during the career transition? We talked about that a lot, but just if you could probably summarize it in maybe 1, 2, or 3 bullets, talk specifically how a career coach, what should someone look for in a career coach, and then what should they expect from a career coach?
Okay. The first thing to look is someone that you're comfortable with when you talk with them. And I always do all my first interviews with Zoom, because I like to see people. I like to get their expressions, just a better feel. Right off the bat, you're going to know, okay, are we going to be a good fit? And then have that career coach. Okay, what does your program look like? Like, I don't have any bronze, gold, silver. Everything I do is custom tailored. So I talk to you, and then, all right, now I know what you're looking for. Now I can put together a proposal. Then I'll send you the proposal. Not every coach works the same way. Some have everything on the website. That's okay too. Just know what you're getting into. Look for somebody who is going to be there for you, is going to listen, is going to be your confidant, and has some sort of certifications. That's another big thing. You gotta, you can't just, they got to be, certified professional coaches. There's an International Coaching Federation. There's the Certified Professional Career Coach that I'm part of. Then there are people who are just resume writers. You get somebody who does it all. They can take you from A to Z and, follow along with you. So, that's kind of the big areas to look for. Look for somebody who is really going to be looking out for your best interest, and being positive. That you hit the nail on the head there. Yeah, you're going to listen to all these things that, it's going to take you 12 months to get a job, and you're not going to get paid what you're worth, and there are no jobs out there for senior executives, and it's so hard. Yeah, I always say, let everybody else think about that, right? Let's put together a very detailed plan on how you're going to get to where you want to go. But if you don't know where you want to go, you'll never get there. So that's the first thing we got to decide.
Yeah, I think a couple things. Certification means a person's met a standard. Anyone can be a career coach who says,
Yes.
they slap up a career coach. I'm a career coach.
Yeah.
But what makes you a career coach who has been certified by an industry standard? So
Yes.
Definitely look for those. And everyone who's been watching our interviews from SCM.Jobs, every inner coach you've talked to has been certified in their career profession. And the last thing I'd like to mention for everyone is that confidant that you're looking for in a career coach, because now you need to be vulnerable. You need to express to somebody your fears. And I'd say, well, I'm not afraid of anything. I'll just take it on. You're going into a new world.
Yeah.
You may not recognize the fear, recognize it as concern, things that keep you up at night, and you need to talk to somebody about it so that they can talk you off the ledge, so to speak, meaning you don't quit a job when you're not ready to quit a job, right? You got to have that confidence. So that relationship is absolutely key, whether it be with Vincent or another career coach, having that one-on-one interview, having them feel comfortable talking to that person, despite the cost, whatever it may be. If it's too low, you get what you pay for. If it's too high, it definitely needs to be within your budget, but ultimately that relationship is key, and that relationship is going to prove the value that they need to have.
And the other thing I will tell you is, nobody should or can guarantee you will get a job within 4 months, 6 months. If they're doing that, it's impossible, right? I mean, I can write you the best resume, go through the best interview coaching techniques, but if you don't use that resume the right way and you don't interview well, that's not on me. That's on you, right? I can only help you get there. So if somebody's saying, hey, I guarantee you'll have 6 interviews within 10 weeks, run the other way. Just run the other way.
There are no guarantees in this world.
Exactly.
That's for sure. So what is the best way for people to get in contact with you? I'm going to bring up your contact slide for folks, but if you don't mind, just kind of share what is the best way to connect with you, and what are you looking for? What are the best clients who should reach out to you and work with you?
Yeah. So the best way to get in touch with me is either email Vinny@resolutecareercoaching.com, or through LinkedIn, and my email is on there as well. You can just hit me up on LinkedIn. I also have I'm on iMessage, on my Italian phone number. I have a stateside number, and all that information is on my LinkedIn account. So you can just reach out to me anytime, day or night. And, I usually respond based on time differences. Within 12 hours or so, you'll hear back from me and usually it's, hey, what can I do for you? What are you looking for? And then let's set up a time. Usually, I set aside 15 to 30 minutes just to talk to people. And whether I can help you or not, or you want to go with me, I may know somebody who can help you. I can point you in the right direction, and that's kind of one of the things I always say. It's, pay it forward. Is I'll spend the time. I don't charge people up front. If you don't decide not to go with me, that's fine. Normally, I kind of deal with all clients, and in one or the other companies I work for is very senior clients. So in my personal business, I like kind of mid-level executives, or 05, 6 even. But I even deal with college graduates. So I'm coaching 2 college. One is just got into physical therapy school. I went through interviewing, coaching with him, and helped him write his whatever the paper he had to submit to get into school, and then go through interviewing. How do you interview for these jobs? And then another one is she has got an intern this summer, is going to graduate in the fall. So we have started 6 months of interview coaching, because she's a very shy person, not very outgoing. So, okay, we need to get you to be comfortable behind a camera in front of people. And these are the type of questions they're going to ask you. So how do you respond to them? So, it's different, again, like I said, for every client. And I don't say no to anybody just because you're a college client, a student, or if you're a colonel or a general. I talk to them, and then we decide right from there. Like I said, it may be that my pricing structure is too high or is too low, or, it is what it is, because we all have to make some money. But at the same time, you take certain things into account. And I really like helping people who are kind of in that mid-level, really, because they're looking to figure out where they're going to be in 20 years. And that's really gives you, okay, man, I really can make a difference today for somebody to help set them up for success.
It sounds like a client needs to be prepared to work. Absolutely. They need to be willing to put in the time. So if you think it's going to be easy, understand that it's not. This is going to be an effort. And if you think about your career, and you put it in the military, officer or enlisted who spend any time in the military, you work to get your career, get promoted. Same thing there. And then to translate mid-career, I would say, and correct me if I'm wrong, senior captain who's gone maybe their second tour to major, is that kind of there? Or in the civilian world, a manager who may have 5 to 10 direct reports and is looking to move up the change into director and the vice president. Is that about right?
Yep. Yeah, especially you hit it right on the head on both, and especially in the military, where you kind of hit that fine line where we did, okay, should I stay or should I go, right? Because once you cross that line, now, if you're 15 years and you get out, you better be getting out and have a really good plan. When I was a commander, and I had even, all my airmen PJs, if they were going to get out, the first thing they had to do is they had to present a plan to me. Okay, what are you going to do? I'm not just going to sign your paperwork and put you on the street. Are you going to school? You're going to get your education. Do you have a job? You look out for people. So it's the same thing. Somebody at that 10-year point is really at a vulnerable point in their life. They're deciding, is the military the right career for me? Or I have still time now where I can grow a civilian career and be very productive. So, to help people think through that is really, really a good exercise on both parts. I enjoy it.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to chat with you. This has been a very valuable interview for our military transitioning folks. We're going to be putting this out specifically for them. And for everyone who is still on, make sure you connect with Vincent on LinkedIn. Let me bring up your slide real quick one more time. Connect with Vinny online. Vincent, reach out to him. Have a message on LinkedIn. It's probably the best way to reach out to anyone, because you have spam filters and all these other different things. Yep. As well as have the conversation, because he can lead you to the right career coach. You may not be a good fit for him, but he knows a lot of other career coaches, and will know your personality would be a better match with someone else if you're not a good match for him. So
Definitely.
again, Benny, thank you for your time today. Really appreciate it. For everyone else, enjoy. Reach out to Vincent, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Randy. Enjoyed being here.
Thank you.